Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to the History Shelf. I am your host, Peg. I just wanted to come to you today with a ton of new books, new releases that are out on the market that I think you should know about if you are a history lover. It is a veritable surfeit of new releases from some great publishers, some of my favorites. I'm going to kind of, in this video, I'm going to try to break them up into publishers, but also then I have like some university presses at the end, and a couple of miscellaneous that I'll wrap up together at the end. But let's start off with a fantastic independent publisher, Savas Beatie, and they sent me some of their best and most like brand new titles on Civil War and American Revolution. But the two that I am really super jacked over, wow. I'll just have to show you because I can't even describe. Like this one right here is just the most, for a Civil War buff. And I've been reading about the Civil War since I was a little girl. Really start amassing a collection and knowledge, just stored up knowledge about the event since my probably my mid to late teens. I'm not going to tell you how old I am now. And I had my undergraduate thesis published in a journal about the Overland Campaign. So I mean, it's in my blood. I love American Civil War history. So when a book like this comes out, it is like a reference that you just need to have. Whether you like the person or not, it's something you need to have. And this is a brand new release. Please check it out. I'll link Savas Beatie's website below, but also you can also check it out and see if it's marked as $39.95 hardcover. It might be a little cheaper at Amazon, I'm not sure. But this is From Arlington to Appomattox, Robert E. Lee's Civil War Day by Day, 1861 to 1865, by Charles R. Knight. And what this is, well, let me just read you a quick description. Let's see here. So it references, Douglas Southall Freeman's massive, Lee's, he wrote the Pulitzer Prize winning, he wrote 4-volume biography of Lee, claiming it's the most thorough history of the man. And indeed, it says here, after spending so many years with his subject, Freeman claimed he knew where Lee was every day of his life, from his entry into West Point in 1825 until his death in 1870. In fact, there are many gaps in Freeman's biography, and hundreds of sources discovered in the decades since its appearance fill in much of what we did not know about the general. So, with this book, From Arlington to Appomattox, Charles Knight does for Lee and students of the war what E.B. Long's Civil War Day by Day did for our ability to understand the conflict as a whole. So this is not another Lee biography, but it says here it's every bit as valuable as one, and perhaps more so. Let's see here. So, absent from the military histories of the war and even from most of the Lee biographies is what the general was doing when he was out of history's public eye. We know Lee rode out to meet survivors of Pickett's charge and accept blame for the defeat, that he tried to lead the Texas Brigade in a counterattack to save the day at the Wilderness, and he took a tearful ride from Wilmer McLean's house at Appomattox after the surrender. But what of the other days? Where was Lee, and what was he doing when the spotlight of history was not there to illuminate him? Let's see here. Instead of telling readers what they already know, Knight focuses on where Lee was, who he was with, and what he was doing every day during the war. Let's see here. The result is an entirely different appreciation for Lee the man, husband, father, friend, and general, a completely fresh sense of his struggles, both personal and professional. Each page, which includes detailed and helpful explanatory footnotes, offers new gems of discovery about Lee because the sources include rare correspondence and papers from his family, his staff, his lieutenants, and the men of his army. And And apparently, General Lee, Robert E. Lee, intended to write a history of the Army of Northern Virginia, but he died before he completed the work. And says here, much of what he would have written will be found in this book, which is based on hundreds of first-person accounts and thus recreates, as far as such a thing is possible, a Lee-centric study of what the man experienced during the war on a daily basis. So obviously, says here, and I agree, it's a tremendous contribution to Civil War literature and reference, and every student must now consult before writing a word about the man. And it's this nice. It's a wider body book. And just look at the annotations, the footnotes. I mean that goes into great detail. So it's essentially almost like a diary of sorts, I guess. But told like, I'll give you. Oh, you know what? I'll give you a sample. Not every entry will be completely riveting, but let's see here. Yeah, and it's fully documented about what he was doing on that day by day. All right. What year should we start in? I don't know. All right, let me just pick one here. All right. December 10th, 1861. Lee writes to John Pemberton regarding the obstructions in the Combahee and Ashepoo rivers. Lee makes official the command structure in the department, formally announcing the creation of five separate military districts. Taylor's promotion to captain ranks from today. And then you look at the footnotes, and it gives you tons more detail about what was going on. It also gives you like an overview for that month, say October 1861. What a reference work. And then we've got awesome photos in the center, as you would expect, of the Lees, I guess his family, friends, associates, colleagues, his staff, politicians, some of the battlefields. So, I mean, this is just a beautiful work. And this Civil War buff is going to enjoy just taking my time reading these entries. So thank you, Savas Beatie. I am very, very excited. Again, I'll link their website below, but this is brand new from them. Next book, also Civil War related. Woo! Brand new on the market. And this goes into my love of the Union Cavalry. I've always been fascinated by the Union Cavalry and how it evolved over the span of the war, from the beginning where it was just very ineffectual, and then by the end it had learned its lessons. The Confederate, Jeb Stuart, Forrest, Mosby, they were all like running rings around them, showing them what cavalry could do, and kind of embarrassing the Union Cavalry. But over time, the Union Cavalry came into its own. And this is tangential to this book, but there's another book that I just learned was published a couple months ago about an ancestor of mine through marriage. Oh, I wish he was, we were related by blood, but I researched this general, and he was a very unsung hero, and that's the name of the book, Unsung Hero of Gettysburg, Brigadier General David McMurtry Gregg, whom Custer served with and served under for a time. But anyway, so I have read reams on the Union Cavalry, so this is a brand new book, and this one is about the boy generals. All right, George Custer, Wesley Merritt, and the Cavalry of the Army of the Potomac by Adolfo Oves. A new edition from Savas Beatie. Says here, The Boy Generals is the first installment. Yes, it's going to be a trilogy. I did not know that. It's the first installment in a remarkable trilogy examining the leading Union Army's mounted arm general, the untold story of the friendship that soured into bitter enmity between two of its more prominent officers, and how their relationship affected them and the army they served. Ooh, sounds good. George Armstrong Custer's career has attracted its fair share of coverage, but most Custer-related studies focus on his decision-making and actions to the exclusion of other important factors, including his relationships with his fellow officers. Custer developed his tactical philosophy within the deeply political atmosphere of the Army of the Potomac's Cavalry Corps. His relationship with his immediate superior, Wesley Merritt, became so acrimonious that even Custer's wife, Libby, described Merritt as her husband's enemy. Ooh, this is fascinating. So this book, The Boy Generals, examines the steadily deteriorating relationship of these two cavalrymen with opposing tactical philosophies and how this relationship affected events in the field. Okay, so that's just a very brief, I've got a lot of books to show you, so I can't read the entire description. This is going to be good. Get a little drama in here. Brand new. And the first in a trilogy. So we're going to be looking at George Custer and Wesley Merritt. Just beautiful. I can't wait to dive into this. You guys know I love me some Civil War history. All right. And the next book I received from Savas Beatie is a book on American Revolution. This publisher likes to do a lot of Civil War and American Revolutionary history. And this one is a unique entry into the field. This is The Road to Yorktown, the French Campaigns in the American Revolution, 1780 to 1783, by Louis-François Bertrand Dupont de Dobreau. I never took French in high school, sorry. Otherwise known as the Comte de Lauberdière. That doesn't sound any better. Edited and annotated by Norman Desmarais. So this is a translated work of what was written by a man who participated in the French campaigns and in the road to Yorktown. Let me just read this real quick here. Let's see. The fate of the American Revolution had yet to be decided when a remarkable 21-year-old Frenchman arrived in America. Louis-François Bertrand, the Count of Lauberdière, belonged to an old noble family that traced its heritage to the Crusades. His father, Francois Charles Mathieu, was musketeer of the guard of King Louis XV. More important, his uncle was General Rochambeau, the commander of all French forces in America. The Count of Lauberdière kept one of the most remarkable diaries of the entire war, and it is published here for the first time as The Road to Yorktown, the French campaigns in the American Revolution. Let's see here. So essentially, the Count of Lauberdière served as an aide-de-camp on General Rochambeau's staff. And says here he rubbed shoulders, obviously, with the Revolution's most important personalities, including Washington and Lafayette. And so his journal covers a host of topics in remarkable detail, including descriptions of the French Army's camp in Newport, Rhode Island, the long march to Yorktown, the siege and capture, and a fascinating examination of the people and their distinctive colonial culture. His attention to battle detail is exceptional. So this will be fantastic. Let's see if there's any sample I can read to you here. No. This is obvious. This is definitely the journal itself. Let's see. We'll start with the diary entry of. It has a nice long. Is this an introduction? I'm not sure, but let me see. January 1781. Happy New Year wishes. Each country, each style, each usage, each custom. When we only know our own country, the neighboring people, we are surprised to find different customs, different practices which don't resemble each other. That's what happened to us and our allies every day. But they found us silly the first New Year's Day. In England and in America, when two men meet the first time in the day, they extend their hand and shake it, saying to each other, "How do you do?" Sometimes even in a very strong manner as a sign of cordiality. Isn't this fascinating? Okay. Listen, two friends, a father and a son, who had not seen each other for 10 years, would not express their joy, their tenderness differently at their first encounter. Finally, the men never embrace. How astonished were the inhabitants of Newport when, on January 1st, they saw most of the soldiers of all the regiments mingled, embrace each other in the streets, and resume embracing each other again. Many officers did the same as a sign of friendship, interest. Men, women, children came to the windows to be joyful witnesses of this new and unusual spectacle for them. How funny. He's like, why don't you guys hug over here? All right, so brand new book out from Savas Beatie. And a little peek, a little window into the revolution seen from a Frenchman's eyes. I'm intrigued about his cultural observations, which he's like, what is up with these people? Excellent. Okay. And then I received the great people at Pegasus Books, a great publisher. They put out such great history. I'm very excited for these two books. Now, one of them I'm probably going to do both once I get to them, but I'm going to be doing this one sooner than the other one. And I'll talk about it just on this channel, an exclusive review on this channel. Because I've read some reviews, or I read a couple of descriptions of this book, and I kind of want to see where I weigh in on it. I'm sure you've heard of it. This is a brand new book, An American Marriage, The Untold Story of Abraham Lincoln and Mary Todd by Michael Burlingame. Now, I guess this one is not really too kind to Mary. So, we're going to see. We're going to see how hard he sticks it to her here. That's what she said. I did not say that. I'm sorry. You know what? That was horrible. But you know what? I'm feeling a little punchy. So, let's see. Basically, it says here, An American Marriage by Michael Burlingame reveals the tragic story of Abraham Lincoln's marriage to Mary Todd. If that doesn't tell you anything, and this is the publish sheet, I think we know what to expect. And in fact, Kirkus Reviews said that this is it's an entertaining biography that will certainly provoke debate. I'm sure it will. So let's read this. Abraham Lincoln was apparently one of those men who regarded connubial bliss as an untenable fantasy. During the Civil War, he pardoned a Union soldier who had deserted the army to return home to wed his sweetheart. As the president signed a document sparing the soldier's life, Lincoln said, "I want to punish the young man. Probably in less than a year, he will wish I had withheld the pardon." Sorry, that's funny. Based on, he was so jaded. Okay, we're going to find out why. Okay, based on 30 years of research, it says here, An American Marriage describes and analyzes why Lincoln had good reason to regret his marriage to Mary Todd. This revealing narrative shows that as First Lady, Mary Lincoln accepted bribes and kickbacks, sold permits and pardons, engaged in extortion, and peddled influence. The reader comes to learn that Lincoln wed Mary Todd because, in all likelihood, she seduced him and then insisted that he protect her honor. How sordid. Perhaps surprisingly, the 5'2" Mrs. Lincoln often physically abused her 6'4" husband, as well as her children and servants. Okay, I'd like to see the evidence for that. She humiliated her husband in public. She caused him as president to fear that she would disgrace him publicly. Unlike her husband, she was not profoundly opposed to slavery and hardly qualifies as the ardent abolitionist that some historians have portrayed. While she provided a useful stimulus to his ambition, she often, quote, crushed his spirit, as his law partner put it. In the end, Lincoln may not have had as successful a presidency as he did, where he showed a preternatural ability to deal with difficult people, if he had not had so much practice at home. Oh, ouch. Well, it's getting great. It's getting huge blurbs from all the majors. We're talking Publishers Weekly. The New York Times calls it a magisterial enterprise. Chicago Tribune. This is a must read. So I'm excited. Are you guys excited for this? I'll bring this to you if you want to know. I mean, again, it's from Pegasus Books. It's out right now. Ask your library if you go to the library, see if they'll stock it for you. It's probably going to be a long wait list for this, but if you are interested in having me kind of bump this up to the top of the list for revealing what I've learned, I'd be happy to do that. Just let me know in the comments below if you would like me to kind of bump this up to the top of the. I'm working on the Anglo-Soviet alliance. I should be done with that hopefully middle of next week. I'm also working on a Thaddeus Stevens bio for my buddy read with Bill Rutenberg. And then in addition to just what I normally have commissioned book reviews that I need to read and write. So I've got a lot going on in the background. But if you guys are really intrigued by this and want to get my take or my opinion on what he presents here, I'm happy to bump this up and try to fast track this. So let me know in the comments below. Okay, and so the next book I received from Pegasus, was so excited to see this is a brand new release. As I said earlier, I wrote my undergraduate thesis on a portion of the Overland Campaign, and essentially kind of outlined how Lee was not really the tactical genius everyone said he was, and in fact, strategically, he was rotten. He had no sense of strategy. Anyway, I've done a lot of research on the Wilderness Battle and Spotsylvania Courthouse, so intimately aware of those events, and I'm always eager to read a new history. And this one is on the Wilderness, the Battle of the Wilderness. This is A Fire in the Wilderness, the first battle between Ulysses Grant and Robert E. Lee, by John Reeves. I'll give you... here we go. Got another pub sheet here. So I'm excited to revisit this again. I did my undergraduate a couple years ago, I think, and I was just really pleased with it, and it was published. So anyway, I kind of miss reading about the meeting. I want to see what another historian has to say on it. Says here, in the spring of 1864, President Lincoln feared that he might not be able to save the Union. The Army of the Potomac had performed poorly over the previous 2 years, and many Northerners were understandably critical of the war effort. Lincoln assumed he'd lose the November election, and he firmly believed a Democratic successor would seek peace immediately, spelling an end to the Union. A Fire in the Wilderness tells the story of that perilous time when the future of the United States depended on the Union Army's success in a desolate forest roughly 65 miles from the nation's capital. Let's see here. At the outset of the Battle of the Wilderness, General Lee's Army of Northern Virginia remained capable of defeating the Army of the Potomac. But 2 days of relentless fighting in dense Virginia woods, Robert E. Lee was never again able to launch offensive operations against Grant's army. Lee, who faced tremendous difficulties replacing fallen soldiers, lost 11,125 men, or 17% of his entire force. On the opposing side, the Union suffered 17,666 casualties. It's mind-boggling. The alarming casualties do not begin to convey the horror of this battle, one of the most gruesome in American history. The impenetrable forest and gunfire smoke made it impossible to view the enemy. Officers often couldn't see their own men during the fighting. The incessant gunfire caused the woods to catch fire, resulting in hundreds of men burning to death. This is a quote from an officer. It was as though Christian men had turned to fiends, and hell itself had usurped the place of the earth. Oh, boy. When the fighting finally subsided during the late evening of the second day, the usually stoical Grant threw himself down on his cot and cried. Well, that's, okay, publicist, that's a little bit dramatic. He didn't throw himself down like a child. He sat down on his cot and sobbed tears of just stress and grief at the loss of life. War is hell. So I'm looking forward to reading this, A Fire in the Wilderness, by John Reeves. I have another book by him. He also wrote, a few years ago, The Lost Indictment of Robert E. Lee. So, cool. And obviously we got the usual pictures and sketch drawings in the center. All right. So, some great Civil War history coming out right now, guys, and I wanted to share that with you. Okay, so that covers the Savas Beatie books and the Pegasus books that are all mostly Civil War related. I am making a mess over here. I think we're about to buy a new desk for me because I'm using a tiny little table right now. And I think the history shelf, might be moving up into the library for future filming. So you might not get this nice bright background anymore. It might be me with some lamps in the library room, which has a tiny window, but we'll see. We'll see. The next set of books are all from the great military history publisher Casemate. You know that. You know them. You love them. I love them. Some great new stuff. Kind of like a wide variety here. We'll stick with World War II, I guess, for right now. All right. This sounds fascinating. I have a couple of books. I have his memoirs from jail. I think is it the Spandau Diaries, I think is what they were. But this is about Albert Speer. Albert Speer, Escaping the Gallows, Secret Conversation with Hitler's Top Nazi by Adrian Greaves. This is a brand new release from Pen and Sword, which is, an imprint of Casemate, part of that group. Slim little volume. Let's see here. So at the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal, Albert Speer, Hitler's one-time number 2, persuaded the judges that he, quote, knew nothing of the Holocaust and related atrocities. Narrowly escaping execution, he was sentenced to 20 years in Spandau prison, Berlin. In 1961, the newly commissioned author, Adrian Greaves, I guess, as the British Army Spandau Guard commander, was befriended by Speer, who taught him German. Wow. Adrian Greaves' record of his conversations with Speer over a 3-year period make for fascinating reading. While the top Nazi admitted to Greaves his secret part in war crimes, after his 1966 release, he determinedly denied any wrongdoing and became an intriguing and popular figure at home and abroad. Following Speer's death in 1981, evidence emerged of his complicity in Hitler's and the Nazis' atrocities. Why are we not surprised? In this uniquely revealing book, the author skillfully blends his own personal experiences and relationship with Speer with a succinct history of the Nazi movement and the horrors of the 30s and 40s. In so doing, new light is thrown on the character of one of the 20th century's most notorious characters. So, yeah. Check that out. That's like from someone who actually sat down with the guy. What do you think, guys? Interested? Huh? I might report back on that soon too. And the next Casemate book we have here, also a Pen and Sword imprint, is Stalin's War on Japan. The Red Army's Manchurian Strategic Offensive Operation, 1945, by Charles Stevenson. That. This is interesting. It says, did Japan surrender in 1945 because of the death and devastation caused by the atomic bombs dropped by the Americans on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or because of the crushing defeat inflicted on their armies by the Soviet Union in Manchukuo, the puppet state they set up in northeast China? I'm pretty sure it's the former, but let's see what he says here. Indeed, the Red Army's rapid and total victory in Manchukuo has been relatively neglected by historians. Charles Stevenson, in the scholarly and highly readable new study, describes the political, diplomatic, and military buildup to the Soviet offensive and its decisive outcome. He also considers to what extent Japan's capitulation is attributable to the atomic bomb or the stunningly successful entry of the Soviet Union into the conflict. Fascinating. Okay, so that's a brief description. We're already at 30 minutes, but I wanted to... that's an interesting premise. I've never heard anyone say that it wasn't the bombs, the atomic bombs that were dropped that caused Japan to surrender. So, more to learn on this, and we'll see if I agree or not. Okay. And this is just a very slim volume, but I jumped at the chance because I'm actually reading a book right now that's coming out. When is it coming out, Peggy? I think it's coming out the end of next month. I'm reviewing it for Shelf Awareness, and it's called The Afghanistan Papers. So I've been learning a lot about how the counterinsurgency plan, the U.S. counterinsurgency plan or lack of counterinsurgency planning in Afghanistan failed. And so just the whole aspect of counterinsurgency to me has been really intriguing of late. And this is a slim little volume that talks exactly about that topic, counterinsurgency, theory and reality. This is by Daniel Whittingham and Stuart Mitchell. And this is a Casemate publication. See, let me read you what is... All right. So counterinsurgency is defined as efforts to defeat and confine a rebellion against a constituted authority. While it has become a buzzword in the last 20 years, it is as old as society itself. So this concise introduction to modern counterinsurgency discusses its development over the last 200 years, beginning with the origins of modern insurgency from the concept of small wars and colonial warfare. It then examines a number of post-1945 insurgencies and how Western armies have tried to counter them, focusing on France's Algerian War and the U.S. experience in Vietnam. This is compared with the British approach in the years after World War II, particularly in Malaya, but also in Kenya, Cyprus, and Northern Ireland. Okay, wow. Against that backdrop, there was an examination of the more recent counterinsurgency campaigns in Afghanistan and Iraq. So, okay, perfect. It's about 150 pages. I can fly through this, and this will be very helpful as well. I think I might dip into this as I conclude my reading of the Afghanistan papers, because having just an understanding of how counterinsurgency works. You always hear that, when someone's on Capitol Hill testifying about the progress of, military operations and, recently in Afghanistan or wherever else, and we talk about counterinsurgency, you're like, what does that mean? It's a major strategy, and most of the U.S.'s experiences with but it takes time. See, that's the other thing. And with America, we like to get in and get out, and I understand that. I'm not a big nation builder myself, but if you have committed to something and you go in and you overturn someone's civilization or what they have going on over their culture, and then there's a vacuum, you've got to plan. You have to plan, and you've got to have a counterinsurgency strategy, and then put in place those tactics that will win over the citizenry, who will accept the local governing authority. But it takes time, and that's just something Americans are famously impatient people. So anyway, but Counterinsurgency by Casemate. I'm really excited to dig into this in lieu of what I'm reading right now. Okay, and then we kind of skip. Then we're going back a couple of centuries here. Yes, we are. Oh, and I like this guy. I have a couple of his books. I like him a lot. He's a British military historian, Jeremy Black, and I've listened to several of his discussions on like New Books Network or he kind of talks. He kind of goes on the podcast networks to kind of talk about his new books, and I always like listening to him. He's a very, very knowledgeable guy. And this is Jeremy Black's How the Army Made Britain a Global Power, 1688 to 1815. This is another Casemate book. It says here, from the Glorious Revolution to Waterloo, campaigning on land was crucial to Britain's history. By the early 19th century, the British Army had become a world operating force, one capable of beating the Marathas as well as the French. This key new study examines how this army was achieved and how this adaptable multi-purpose army helped make Britain a global power. There were serious failures, notably in the American War of Independence, but also successes. And this is that history, from tactics to strategy, domestic politics to international goals. Fantastic. Let me just open up the... Okay, this is great. It's a slim volume, but, you know, it'll cover a lot of different areas, give it like an overview. Fighting the French on the continent covers that from 1689 to 1748. Later on, he goes into the 7 Years' War, the American War of Independence, then India, and then fighting in Europe, and then fighting around the world. So How the Army Made Britain a Global Power by Jeremy Black. Very excited for this new release as well. Yes. So many good things coming out. There's just so many people writing so many awesome history and military history titles right now. It's just like, oh my gosh. I'm always curious to know what appeals to you guys. So please just, you know, if anything jumped out or if there's an era or a period that I've talked about here in these books that really intrigues you, let me know. Let me know in the comments below. And I've always been wanting to read more about this, the Charge of the Light Brigade. You know, in the Crimean War and Balaclava. And this is a brand new book. Brand new release from Pen and Sword. Yep, first published in Great Britain in this year. But I was able to get a copy of this. And you can get it at Casemate. I'll also link all these sites below for you. Into the Valley of Death, The Light Cavalry at Balaclava by Nick Thomas. Look at that. And this is a little bit thicker of a book here. But I love that cover. Look at that. Let's see. So Into the Valley of Death tells the thrilling story of the Charge of the Light Brigade in the words of the men who fought during the most heroic and yet futile engagement of the modern era. By drawing on key evidence, the author has not only provided a clear narrative of the events leading up to the 25th of October, 1854, but has painted a vivid picture of the charge itself. No punches are pulled, and the carnage which ensued is clear for all to read, dispelling the romantic myth of death or glory fostered by the Victorians. Yeah, I bet this is going to be some brutal, visceral reading here. This work tells the blood and gut story of a desperate charge by 673 men in the face of what seemed insurmountable odds. It reveals the trauma endured by the rank and file who witnessed all around them men and horses cut to pieces while endeavoring to ride through walls of flying iron and lead and not knowing if the next second would be their last. Ugh. Wow. And this is effective copy. Let me just tell you that right now. Yet in the midst of this horror, sorry, why did I start off like so cheery? Yet in the midst of this horror and devastation, the author takes time to give an overview of the battle itself and puts on the hats of some of the commanders involved, looking at not only what they did, but also at how a terrible disaster could so easily have been turned into the greatest single victory of its time. This work truly lifts the lid on the events of over 150 years ago, and through the words of the survivors, allows the reader to assign the responsibility for the charge having taken place and for the consequent loss of the Light Brigade. So, wow. Oh, I'm excited for this. Wow. Okay, wow, there's a lot of... Okay, so most of the book, not most of the book, but a lot of tables and appendices in the back. Not sure what those are for. I'll get to those, but he does not stint on his research. Okay, he lists everyone who was killed or wounded, what their rank was. Oh, wow. I don't even know how to read some of these tables. But let's see. So the actual history in the account, the narrative itself, we've got the tables, we have Appendix 2. Oh, wow. Medals given out. Oh, it covers a lot. But I think the appendices take up about half the book. But this is Into the Valley of Death, The Light Cavalry at Balaclava by Nick Thomas. And just to close out a couple of neat books, I didn't even know about these. These were just sent to me from my publicist at Casemate, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. These are just like pieces of memorabilia that I am thrilled to have. They're beautiful, just naked hardcovers. of U.S. Army pocket manuals. So let's start with from 1941 to 45. This is the U.S. Army Infantryman Pocket Manual, 1941 to 45, ETO and MTO. Now, these are both books I'm going to show you are edited by Chris McNabb. Okay, so this is just intriguing. This was the pocket manual for the U.S. Army Infantryman. You know, how your platoon is set up, how your organization is set up. We get short, oh my goodness. Training in mine warfare. It gives instructions on digging in, camouflage, concealment, and cover. I mean, it's just so neat. It's totally like a piece of memorabilia, basically. This is, let me just try to read you something really brief here. Extensive documentation was provided for the in-theater U.S. Army infantrymen in Europe in Second World War. From booklets rather misguidedly advising on how to behave in foreign countries through to field manuals explaining core combat tactics across squad, platoon, company, and battalion levels. This pocket manual presents critical insights from many of these sources, but also draws on a broad spectrum of intelligence reports, after-action reports, and other rare publications. Together, they give an inside view on what it was like to live and fight in the U.S. Army infantry during arguably the most consequential conflict in human history. So this one covers kind of like World War II, and then we have one for Vietnam, the U.S. Army Infantry Vietnam Pocket Manual. Just look at this. They're just outstanding. I mean, I've already looked through here, and some of these just like talking about how to, like, you know, general care and maintenance of your weapons, your equipment, your clothing, your boots, how to fashion a canopy, acclimation to the heat and humidity, jungle training. This is fascinating. Let's see here. Let me see this. So this one is the pocket manual provides a deep insight into what it was like for infantry to live, survive, and fight in Vietnam, whether launching a major air mobile search and destroy operation or conducting endless hot and humid small unit patrols from jungle fire bases. The book includes infantry intelligence documents about the NVA and VC threats, plus chapters explaining hard-won lessons about using weaponry, surviving and moving through the jungle, tactical maneuvers, and applications of the ubiquitous helicopter for combat and support. Isn't that fascinating? They're like $17 each. And they just, they have, you know, pictures, charts. There's a picture of a U.S. soldier carefully lifting a Viet Cong mine with his bayonet. Ugh. So, all right. So that kind of wraps up. I still have more books. I'll probably make a separate video because I'm at 43 minutes. But anyway, these are some of the brand new history releases that have come out and have come across the History Shelf's desk. And let me know what you feel about American Marriage. If you'd like me to bump that up, if you're really intrigued to see how they slice and dice up Mary Todd. I'm just so curious. Notice the pub sheet didn't mention anything about her mental illness. You know, she did have some mental illness stuff going on there. So let's, you know, have some compassion. But anyway, but I love Lincoln too, and that man was hard put upon. We all know this. Okay, but anyway, let me know what you think about these books, guys. I'm going to be out of pocket for the next couple of days. Got some doctor appointments I'm not looking forward to, but it'll be all right. So I'm just going to try to make another video today so that you have something to watch over the next couple days, because it's been over a week since my last video, so sorry for the delay. Let me know what you think of these books below, BookTube. It's great to see you as always. Take care out there, and talk to you soon. Bye.